I look ahead about what more can I do? What else is out there? How else can I reinvent and recreate myself in a way that can impact and touch more people?
Welcome to Working Women Mentor, a podcast where you will find a mentor moment in every episode. We are meeting incredible women from around the world with real stories and learning from the moment that changed it all for them. I'm your host, Rani Alfers, and I'm ready to introduce you to our next guest. Hello. Welcome back to Working Women Mentor. I am your host, Rani Alfers, and our guest mentor today is Dr. Carol Parker Walsh. She is an incredible CEO, strategic advisor, leadership coach, and strategist for all things you and your career. Dr. Walsh is the founder of Carol Parker Walsh Consulting and has taken an award-winning background in law with over 30 years as a practicing attorney, academia, and growing her own career to some of the highest levels she wanted to achieve. She's bottled up all this information and has given a TED Talk. She's an Amazon best-selling author and a keynote speaker. But today, she's here with us on this podcast, and it is packed full of tips. It's going to leave you thinking about where you are today, where you want to be, and the mentor moments that she's sharing with us that meant so much to her in her career, the ones that really guided her to these heights, she's sharing with us today. All the little tricks, tips, and insights into how we should move forward. Without further ado, let's jump in and meet the beautiful, lively, full of knowledge and generosity, Dr. Carol Parker Walsh. Here we go. Dr. Carol Parker Walsh, thank you so much for joining us today on Working Women Mentor. We're incredibly excited to have you and cannot wait for this conversation today. So thank you. How are you doing today?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm doing fabulous. It's one of the few days in the rainy Pacific Northwest that we actually have a little sunshine going on.
We are going to use that sunshine and that energy and bring it into this conversation today. So, Dr. Walsh, I have to start out with just you introducing yourself to the audience because you have a beautiful way of bringing that light into these conversations. So, please share with us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. My career started as I was a labor and employment attorney and practiced in Chicago, focused on labor law, and then worked with a firm doing employment discrimination litigation, a lot of Title VII work, sexual harassment, racial, gender, age discrimination cases. And so after 10 years of that, and when I relocated here to the Northwest, I also did some time as an HR director and helping organizations create policies that didn't allow them to be sued and to create better cultures in their workplace, and moved over into organizational consulting because I thought, having been at that side of the table, I really wanted to start working with leaders and teams and within organizations to help them function better. And so I became a management and organizational consultant, did that for one of the largest employers out here in the Pacific Northwest for quite a bit of time. And that was before I decided to get my doctorate. And I was doing this work. And when I stepped out of doing consulting, I moved into academia. And so I started teaching people how to be great leaders and how to show up in the workplace and how to function at a higher level and be more strategic thinkers and be more human centered in terms of the work and the leadership that they did. That led to me directing graduate programs in leadership and development, and then becoming an associate dean. And after about another 20 years of all of that, I decided that I wanted to go back to the things that were really passionate for me, which was working with individuals one on one, supporting people to be the best leaders they can be, to be the best people that they can be, to figure out where they wanted to go and how they wanted to impact the world and their own lives and careers. So it's given me a really unique kind of perspective to be able to do the work that I've been able to do below these kind of 30 plus years.
Yeah, it sure has. As you were explaining this, the exact thing that popped in my mind was you study people.
Yeah.
Their behavior to begin with, and then going into actually studying it in university, teaching it, and now helping us be a version of ourselves. But what an interesting journey. And I can't wait to dive into this. But as an observer of people, I do always ask our guests, have you reached out to any of your friends to see how they describe you, or what would they observe and tell us about you that we haven't gotten to learn about you yet?
Yeah, that's interesting. I did do that. Most people said that they found me intelligent. I think the one I relate to the most is that they said I was real. And from them, I was authentic. It's kind of like what you see is what you get in terms of who I am, which they always appreciated about me. That they found me capable. They said I had a lot of wisdom. That was fun. One person said was that I had the capability of really seeing people and really being available to that person in a way that maybe other people couldn't. And I thought, wow, what a compliment that I was able to really be available to them because I could see things at a level that either sometimes they couldn't even see themselves.
That's an incredible compliment because I know a lot of people that can see people, but to be available for them, that's it. That's one more step, isn't it? That's an insightful friend of yours.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
something to treasure. The topic of authenticity, we've talked about this a lot on Working Women Mentor. I want to touch on that because you yourself are known as being what you see is what you get. When you're talking with women, do you find it harder and harder in the workplace or just in life to actually find that authentic version or put it out there to the world? Or are we overcomplicating what that actually means?
That's a really great question. I think for women, it is difficult to be authentic because we grew up with the narrative that said we should not be, right? Particularly for those of us who are maybe late boomers or early Gen Xers, we definitely had this kind of messaging around not being too seen, too loud, blending in, being adaptive. So even if we were more bold or our characters were such that we could be more present or step into our power, any of those things, we were told to tone that down or to kind of shift that a little bit. Or if we did step fully into it, that we were just like one of the guys or being overly masculine, right? So it was like these two kind of categories that were replaced in that didn't allow us to just emerge as terms of who we are. Because over the years of dissecting pieces of ourselves and not being able to show up fully, it becomes challenging when you're now in midlife and people are saying be authentic. You're like, I don't even know what that means anymore, right? Or I don't even know how to do that in a way that feels safe and feels that it will be accepted and respected. So I do think there is a challenge for that. I think what's beautiful is when I watch Gen Z and the millennials, I think they are who they are, right? I think a lot of them do show up really as they are and don't want to compromise for that at all, which is fascinating to me considering that they grew up with Instagram that is such a mischaracterization of who people are.
Isn't it?
It
It's almost
really
like the opposite.
it is the opposite, right? Instagram has really had an impact actually on a lot of their own self-esteem and self-worth, but for the most part, I do see them showing up as like, "This is just who I am. This is me," and, either accept it or not. But definitely for women who are midlife, I think it's more of a challenge.
I'm glad to hear you weigh in on that because when I'm talking with other women, it seems to be that single most identifying quality of which part of me is most authentic that I'm putting out there. Even if it's one or two pieces, if it can just be truly natural and yeah, I use the word authentic, but just, organic, if you will. I can see just leaps and bounds difference in comfort levels and just your trajectory almost because one
Absolutely.
or two pieces are just out there. So it's nice to
Absolutely.
hear you say that.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues of feeling safe to be able to do that and feeling that you'll still be respected. I think is really interesting when we look at some of the better and best qualities of leadership now. They tend to be ones that are naturally attributed to the feminine in
Mhm.
terms of empathy and support and being nurturing and being available and fostering inclusion and things of that nature. When we look at now what we think is a great leader, those are the things that we look for, but those are the things that we often had categorized as soft skills as opposed
Mhm.
to the hard skills that we needed to develop to get ahead and to be successful.
I agree. Well, I want to do this. I want to roll the clock back a little bit to back to your career as an attorney, back to your time working in HR, looking at what is going on in the workplace during these years and talk a little bit about ethics because it's an interesting topic everywhere. First, have you faced anything just over your earlier career, maybe, that you felt this might compromise my own ethics if I don't stand up and do X? Have you run into those situations? And what would you do maybe even differently now? Or what advice would you give to women who are facing these circumstances?
That's really a great question. I will have to say, I have always felt as if, and been very, very proud of having my own kind of moral compass that I was able to follow. And for the most part, work with individuals who honored and respected that. So I didn't have a lot of challenges to, well, let's just do this and to see if I had to make that moral choice of which way to go. But I will say my own ethics were tested. One of the things as a labor attorney, when we used to do arbitrations and I would win cases, clients would be so happy that they would want to reward me for the success. And I had one client that was in Texas, actually, even though I was practicing in Chicago, that I was able to win a pretty sizable settlement or agreement for his case. I won this case for him. And he wanted to reward me with a $50,000 check. And that is hard to turn down.
Yes.
Was
It's a very nice
but we
gift.
it was a very nice gift, but we weren't allowed as attorneys to accept those type of gifts, right? It was everything had been taken care of in terms of pricing, and so that type of gift would have been unethical, both in the practice of law and just according to our own standards of how we did work in our office. And so I disclosed that to my boss and told the individual, "Thank you. The fact that you won the case and that everything is available for you and that things went your way and that you have a very nice settlement, that you enjoy that, and thank you, but no thank you." So I think that was the biggest test of my own ethics throughout my career
Yeah.
because that's a pretty sizable sum that I would have enjoyed.
I think when you get into those situations, often there's one side of our brain that's like, well, you're reasoning, you're rationing, your
Oh,
two
of
sides are
course.
sort of talking to each other and figuring out which way are we going. It's that moral compass. It's what you do when no one's looking, right? So good for you. I know a lot of people in workplace and outside, even at home, face these situations. And when it's at work, you don't want to lose your job, you don't want to disappoint. You run into these situations, whether it's sales or production or just contracts or all of these things that you can be swayed and it happens. And it's just how do you steer on course? And I think that's an interesting topic right now in the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it's can you look in the mirror in the morning? And, for me, that's always a litmus test. Can I sleep at night? Can I look at myself in the mirror in the morning? And can I continue to do the good work that I want to do in the world when something like that is hanging over my head? Because for me, whenever you do things that are unethical or where you cross that line, there's always a witness. You rarely do them in isolation. And so that to me is my reputation and how people see me. And if I were to do that, there would have been other people who either would have to also either swear to secrecy or would also be partners in crime. And having that over my head is just something that I never ever want to experience. And you're right, there's a lot of compromise of that when for the sake of either finances or promotion opportunities or titles or positions or the like. But for me, it's like I want to sleep at night. It's the example I want to set for my family. I want to be able to look in the mirror, and I do not want anyone to leverage anything over me at a later date.
That's right. You never want anything hanging over your head. I absolutely agree with that. And that's the fearless side of you. And I want to ask you about fearless because you took the time, the energy, the love of supporting women in these changes and creating this academy. So share with us about the reasoning behind this and what this concept is.
What I created with this Fearless Academy, it was for women in midlife who wanted to step into their authenticity and to step into another path or direction in their career, but felt stuck, right? What often happens in midlife when you're in that pivot, when you're in that time, they call it midlife because you're in between aging parents, you're in between children who are now stepping into whatever iteration of their life is going to be, and you feel as if you've already put in the time, right? So there's that sunk cost fallacy that kicks in. Well, my degree's in this, or I've worked in this for 10 or 15 years, so I've already done it, so I might as well stay. And there's the fear of what will happen if I were to change. How will this impact others around me? How will this impact how I'm taking care of my aging parents and taking care of my children? How will this impact my family life if I were to make a shift or change? What will people think of me? How will this impact my reputation? And on and on and on. And all of these reasons that we don't step into the life that we want to have. And what we do know through studies and research is that when we go through our lifespan and look back, we rarely regret the things that we've done. Like we can get over them or talk our way through them. But what we regret most are the things that we didn't do. And so to live a life and to have this thing of regret hanging over you was something that I wanted to help guard against and to fight against. So this fearless was really about helping women at midlife to fearlessly step into what they wanted to do and to go after the career in life that they would absolutely love and would love to have.
With the midlife piece is, I was just reading even in the Wall Street Journal this week about how many 65-year-olds are going to be in our country. It was like this record breaking amount right now. I don't know if you saw that article, and it reminds me of that. It's like who you're talking with, there's something going on with their family. My dad, and I don't even feel like I'm in midlife yet. I'm getting close. My father, he suffered from pancreatic cancer this past year. You're just switching to where you're thinking more about them aging. My
Mhm.
mom passed away many years ago, but there's so many people out there that we always have so much riding on us. We feel like the weight of the world in general. And so I think this
Yes.
advice that you're giving, I feel that way right now. I'm not even quite at midlife and I already feel that way.
So many women who said to me, "Man, where were you 20 years ago or 10 years ago?" And honestly, I was like, "Well, where was I for myself, a certain while ago?" I mean, even when I started practicing law, I did it for 10 years. I knew pretty quickly that I wanted to shift. But I kept hearing from people that, "Well, all that money, all that schooling, but you're a lawyer." People even today, when they hear that I have a law degree, are like, "Why aren't you practicing?" So societal ideas and expectations can be really overwhelming, and people's idea of what success looks like, they try to put it on you. So if they see you successfully moving in one direction, there's a lot of pushback to stay the course because in their mind, it doesn't make sense. But I always say people can't see beyond their own limitations and people aren't living your life. So you have to live the best life for yourself. And a lot of this really spearheaded out of COVID because people started really thinking about what mattered and what impact I wanted to make and what do I really want to do with my life and career? Because so many people, when I would talk to them, are in roles or in fields that were recommended to them. That a guidance counselor at college said they should do it, or their father was a lawyer, so they became a lawyer, or their mom was an educator, so they became an educator, right? Or someone else suggested that this would be a great field for you. You'd be a fabulous at doing this. And so what I found is that a lot of women were in these careers that really wasn't their first choice or a choice for them at all. And now they're at a place where they really wanted to make that choice for themselves. And so this was about helping them to empower themselves to be able to choose what made the best sense for them, independent of what anyone else thought or believed was possible for themselves.
I love it. I love it. I've experienced, I just was on a podcast recently, Jen Drummond, her podcast, and we talked about this exact thing. And I said, I've experienced it myself. People want to put you in a box. You're doing X. Why are you doing Y now? What are you thinking? I was offended by some of the reactions that I received by this. Really offended. And I think sometimes, even if I'm thinking of just friends I speak with, you might even have loved what you were doing 20 years ago. Life changes. And just that ability to know that people like you, your programs, your leadership counseling is there to support us during that time. It's a good voice to have.
That's why authenticity is so important because when we lose, to me, your authenticity connects you to really your purpose and your passion, whatever that is. We often overlook, which is why we get confused about, well, I've been doing this, I might as well stay doing this, right? Other people may be confused when you do decide to reinvent or course correct because you've gotten in touch with something that's telling you this is where you want to go, but it's disconcerting for other people because in their mind, you should stay the course. This makes sense to them, right? Why doesn't it make sense for you? But it is such a precarious thing to make sure that we are living in our authenticity and not living someone else's expectations.
That's right. Interesting. I think sometimes it's the people who have the least interaction with you or least affected by your choices that have the biggest opinion about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, what do
Yeah.
you care? What does it matter to you what I do? You have an impressive list, and I'm gonna go over all I'm sure everyone heard them in our intro, an impressive list of what you've done, these TED Talks, these leadership pieces of your experience. As you mentioned, you're a lawyer, you and all these varieties of area, academia. But how are you feeling about that, and how are you advising women when you have all of these successes to stay humble? We talked about authenticity, but how do you balance that in your mind to where you feel like, well, I've either done it all or what's left to come? Can you walk me through that? I mean, you have to have some humbling ways to still feel like you haven't done everything yet.
Yeah. I think what is true is that most people are more impressed with what I've done than I am.
Good thing, right? Yeah.
Right? So for me, the things that I've done are great, but I have so much more life to live and so much to give. So if I just sat back and said, "Oh, well, look at me, look at everything that I've done. Okay, now what's next?" Like, I still have to get up another day and still, make a contribution. And for me, it's about the impact that I wanna make. And there's a lot of women and a lot of organizations and a lot of people that I have impacted, but there are so many more that I have not even connected with or had a conversation with or need to be able to connect with. I did a keynote yesterday, and that was a room of almost 100 people who had never heard me before. And the comments and feedback that I got from people saying, "Oh my goodness, the perspective, the insights, yeah, I'm totally thinking differently about how I want to approach things." That is what keeps me going. It's because there's still people who have yet to hear. There's still people who may feel stuck. There's still gonna be people who haven't been able to put the puzzle pieces together in a way that makes sense for them, or there are people who feel like they can't do something that they just need someone to let them know that they can, that are out there. So for me, I look ahead about what more can I do? What else is out there? How else can I reinvent and recreate myself in a way that can impact and touch more people? And so not just resting on what I have, but there's so much more that can be done.
Don't look out that rearview mirror.
Oh,
Listen, everyone, do
oh.
not look out the rearview mirror. So, speaking of impact, I'm curious to know what your mentor moment is. I know you've had so many mentors in your life, and what is that one piece of advice that you have?
I feel like I've had really 2 key mentors in my life, one personal and one professional. And my Aunt Mary, God rest her soul, was my kind of personal guru who just helped me to come into womanhood in a way that, because she was such a worldly wise sage, she had nothing more than an 8th grade education, but she lived life and she had knowledge beyond anything the most highly educated person would have. And so she gave me such wonderful advice on just how to live and be in the world. And the other mentor that I had when I was one of the deans at a university, she was my provost. She was another guiding force that just supported me deeply in where I wanted to go and how I wanted to show up as a leader in the work that I was doing. And I would say if I looked at both of those, even though they came from very different perspectives, the commonality in what they both shared with me was you have to love yourself. You have to have self-confidence, not just confidence, because I think there's a difference between confidence and self-confidence, and that you just have to be your best version of you. Those were the fundamental things that I always got from both sides of the spectrum. And if you can have that, because when all else fails, all you have is you. And
Right.
so you have to be the one that is moving in the right direction. You have to be the one that's making those decisions. You have to feel good and confident about that. And so that for me was the guiding things for me throughout my entire career and continue to be in my life. And what I instill and teach even in my children is that's what's important, right? You have to love and respect yourself. There's a quote by Brene Brown that says, "Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance." And I love that because what that means is your idea of wanting to be accepted or wanting to succeed or wanting to be seen as someone who's amazing in the world, should never trump how you feel about yourself and how you connect to yourself and how you protect yourself and love yourself and show up as your best self.
It's time for a quick sponsored ad from EMK Skincare. It's my skincare secret I swear by and love it so much. I bought the company. EMK was founded over 30 years ago in Beverly Hills and is crafted from science-backed research of human placenta and the bioidentical properties to placenta found in nature. High-potency, plant-powered formulas with clinically proven ingredients. Anti-aging is just not realistic, but healthy aging skin is. And it's why this brand is loved by dermatologists, plastic surgeons, estheticians for its healing ingredients and reduced downtime after procedures. It's my secret to glowing skin, even on my busiest days, my travel days, and my longest work days. Visit emkskincare.com to sign up for emails and receive 15% off your first purchase. Now back to the episode.
How would you, Carol, encourage women to get involved with councils and leadership pieces and other mentors amongst their, professional life or even personally? Because it's something sometimes like we were talking before our recording on you're working to put together these retreats. Sometimes we just don't make the time to do this stuff. I can tell you I've got a
Mhm.
zillion things to do during the day. I hope someone's listening and gets their mentor moment from us. And that's that quick hit of something, but how do we just get out there and meet other people and make this happen?
I mean, it goes back to really, I think, the theme of what we've been talking about, which is like authenticity and knowing what you want and where you want to go. And if you know that, then you'll know how to look for places and spaces that can be areas of support and development for you. Right. So, and it doesn't mean being involved in everything everywhere all at once, using that movie's title, but it just means to really think about what do I need now? Like, what do I want to lean in this year and really focus on? That's what I've learned to do in my own life is like really think about what is the development that I want to have for myself this year? And I want to spend that time doing it. I think what we do, and we live in a society where we fill our plates to the brim of to dos and we try to multitask too much. And as a result, we don't get as much done as we want to. And so instead of focusing on all the things you want to get accomplished, just pick one that you really want to focus on so that you can really lean in and have the experience and the time to get the connection that you need. And so you find the places that you want to show up in that way. Like I have been involved in different councils and things of that nature, but I'm not involved in all of them now. I mean, I was involved with Forbes Coaches Council for a while. That met a need at the time. I was involved with Newsweek. I was involved in Entrepreneurs Leadership. Right now I'm involved with Harvard's Institute of Coaching, right? That's where I'm at now within my life and in my career and where I want to fellowship, where I want to connect, where I want to gain insight, where I want to spend my time and my energy. So you don't have to be in everything. But if you know where you're going and you're clear about your vision, your direction, what it is that you want to accomplish, then look for those spaces that are going to fill you up where you can grow and where you can develop in those spaces. And so that's what I would say. And to your point, I think you made a very valid point. We need to take the time to do that. But part of that is getting things off of our plate that we don't have to do, that we've been maybe convinced that we have to do, or spend so much time doing that it doesn't allow us to hear ourselves think and to focus on what really matters for ourselves.
Great advice. I'm curious how you see the mentorship piece of this different from your corporate years to academia. Is there a big difference in how each of these areas are approaching, being supportive, helping others around at least a few people that you've met? Do you see a shift in this, Carol?
Yeah, I do. So academia is a different animal.
I can only imagine. I way over my playing field.
It's not the most supportive field for mentoring. It's an atmosphere. It's why they call it the ivory tower. It's kind of separated in its own little world in a lot of ways. And the way mentorship is done in academia, I got lucky with the person that supported me when I was in academia. But usually the way it's done in academia, it's not about authenticity and fostering who you are and yourself. It's about following in the footsteps of others. So it's fostering this continuation of a narrative versus, surprisingly, even though it's an institution that's supposed to be inventing knowledge and creating new things, it's not as supportive of really stepping out in terms of your authentic self. Now, I will say in the corporate space, from the time that I was entrenched in it to today, I see it different than that. I see
Good.
there was some similarities in terms of mentorship. It was do as I say. I know what's best for you. Just follow what I have to say, and my path will get you where you want to go. So you just acquiesced any kind of authority or agency and just continued on in a path where someone else laid out for you. Today is different. And I think what I feel a good mentor is someone who can support your growth and your path and not dictate to you what's best for you. And so you want to
Mm,
be really careful about entering into a mentorship relationship when you don't feel as if you have agency. You're looking for someone to tell you what to do. That really, in my opinion, is not a mentor. A mentor is someone who helps you bring out the best in you. I think one of the most powerful things a mentor can say to you is, listen, I know you well enough to know, and then finish that sentence. It's a
mm.
relationship. They know you because you've been able to cultivate a relationship. They know your goals. They know what your strengths are. They know your blind spots. They know all of these things. So as you're moving in a direction, they're able to say, okay, as the objective observer, I know you well enough to know here are some of the challenges you may face with that. Here are some of the obstacles that may be in your way with that. Here's some things you may want to think about as you're navigating it, because this is what I know about you. And as you're moving in that direction, these are going to be some of the things or some of the potential barriers that may keep you from going where you need to go. And so for me, that is what a mentor does. It's someone that's in relationship that's designed to help support you to go where it is that you see yourself going and moving forth in the world or in your career in whatever it is that you choose to do. The other thing I think mentors need to be vulnerable. They need to have a deep level of vulnerability to also share where they stumbled and how it was hard for them. I'm sharing these things with you now that I've learned from mentors, but it wasn't, you know, my mother used to tell me that I didn't believe fire was hot. This is the old Southern thing to me that I didn't learn lessons easily. I get a little bit stubborn and stuck in my ways. I didn't always listen. I thought my way would be better. Not hearing the advice of people who loved me enough to try to give me what I was saying, that I know you well enough to know maybe you want to think about this, and thinking, no, I'm going to chart my own course. But they also did that in a way of saying, let me tell you a story, or let me tell you an experience I had and how I had to learn. Let me tell you where I stumbled and where I suffered. Let me tell you where I went down this direction, and here's what I learned from that experience. And now I want to give you the benefit of that lesson.
Trust building too,
It's
right? It's like that
building.
trust building, you're on the journey together. It's like, I can't tell you what to do, I can tell you how this happened. And I think that's great advice to anyone who's listening from that mentor mentee, because sometimes you don't exactly know how to give the advice or what that person might need. So I think that's great advice on how you pulled that together to say, hey, if you start out almost with these steps, you're going to be helpful. So let me ask you, if you're thinking about observing that mentor relationship with someone in the workplace, what are the skills that you think women need now more than ever? Qualities, the skill sets, maybe even the mindset in the workplace. What's going to really lead us into the future?
Yeah, that's a big question. There's three things that I usually talk about. And the first one is mindset. It's really making sure that you aren't operating in a way that is, and to use the word again, inauthentic to yourself, right? So that you have that self-acceptance, you have that level of self-awareness, you have the ability to kind of do that self-analysis and self-evaluative work that needs to happen to make sure that you always are becoming the better version of yourself. The first piece is just like understanding that the work starts with you and internally before it starts externally, right? If you playing field is clean, if you will, then it allows you to really operate in a way outside of yourself that is going to be real and authentic and really can really help and be supportive to other people. right? So you kind of have to, check yourself first before you are working with other people. And I think that's what's most important. So if there's any kind of ulterior motives or some things that you need to work through or deal with, you want to make sure that you're working through those first and foremost. And then the next thing that you want to do is to really learn how to embrace what it is that you bring to the table. Know what you're good at and be proud of what you're good at. Don't be hesitant around it. Don't be apologetic about it. Don't be shy about it. If there's certain things that you know you're good at, lean into what you know you're good at. But if you're not good at certain things, that doesn't mean that you're weak or you're deficient. It just means that's not your forte. Other people that are good at those things and bring them along on the ride, use them as additional resources as you're building kind of a support system that's really helping you move forward. I think having this idea that this is the only person that can help me as a mentor and not thinking that I could have a couple of people that may be good at certain things that could really help me grow and flourish as opposed to thinking there's one size fit all, or as a mentor, me thinking I have to be everything to that person and putting that upon yourself as well just becomes problematic. And then we start getting into imposter syndrome and I'm not good enough. And why did I know that?
All kind of other issues.
Yeah. Right. And it'll
Yeah.
just opens Pandora's box to some other things.
Yes.
So just know what you're good at and embrace that boldly. And if you're not, say, listen, I'm going to bring somebody in who's really great at that, and they know they're great at that, so that you can get the full support that you need. And the other thing is make yourself available, right? Let people know that you're out there. Let people know that you are available, and this is how you support from a mentor perspective. This is how I can be of support. These are the ways that I could really be a mentor to someone. And as someone who's looking for a mentor, be clear about what you want and what you need from a mentor so that you can really make a good match in moving forward. Those are the 3 things I would say. Up your own stuff, know what you do, and make yourself available.
Well, I have to ask you about your podcast. We're on a podcast. You had taken amongst many things that you're doing. I have to ask you about Midlife Career Rebel. Can you give us a little bit of a background about that? What made you start it? We want to go find it. We want to support you. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I started it because it's what I think of myself as a midlife career rebel, right? I have boldly and proudly had iterations in my career. From the outside, it looks maybe confusing to people, but on the inside, it makes complete sense to me, every iteration that I've done. And I wanted to create something that gave people advice on how to own your own significance and step into whatever life or career makes the best sense for you. And so, yeah, that's really what it's about. So it's advice and tips and information that really can help you manage your mindset, help shift perspective, and step into what makes sense for you.
We will be sure to share that link so everyone can support, follow, share, find some great guests for you. It's a wonderful thing. I think you give so much time to other people to help and to lend your experience. I mean, really the ultimate in mentorship. So I think it's incredible. Do you have any lasting advice that you want to leave us today with, Dr. Carol Parker Walsh? Everything you've learned in life, all the wonderful people you've had. Is there anything else you wanna leave us with today?
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes, which of course I don't know it by heart, but I know the gist of it. It's by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And it basically talks about, listen, I hope you're happy with your life. I hope you're loving what you're doing. But if you don't, I also hope you have the courage to know that you can change and do whatever it is that you want to do, that you will be able to have the courage to step into whatever iteration makes the best sense for you. And I love that quote because it makes me always know that tomorrow I can do something completely different, right? I can step into something that makes the best sense for me at this moment in time in my life. And it doesn't matter if it makes sense to anyone else around me, as long as I know that I'm doing the work that I love to do, that I'm loving my life and it makes the best sense for me in the world.
You have to keep moving. I think that's a beautiful quote. Carol, where can everyone find you and follow your journey?
Well, you can definitely go to my website at www.carolparkerwalsh.com and, play around there. There's a lot of resources and other links that will take you to other places for me. And LinkedIn, I love to play on LinkedIn. So you can definitely find articles and other tidbits and information that can help you there. So yeah, I would say those two places would be the best. I also have a YouTube channel, and so I do a TV segment once a month, and so there's a lot of that's available for you there as well.
I love it. We will follow your journey and support of others out there, and I cannot wait to see what you work on next. It was such a pleasure meeting you, and thank you for your time on Working Women Mentor today.
Yeah, thank you.
Before you go, a huge thank you for being a part of this episode. I hope it left you with a spark of inspiration. And if you haven't already, hit that follow button and subscribe button to stay connected. Now is a great time. Your reviews are the heartbeat of our podcast. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, a review would really mean the world to us. Let's keep this conversation going as well on Instagram at Rani Alfers. Visit us at ranialfers.com for all episodes, show notes, and also to express your interest to be a guest. Please sign up. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, I'll see you back on Working Women Mentor.